Sir, can I sit with you until my legs stop shaking? The words came out of a 9-year-old boy's mouth like a prayer nobody had ever answered. His small hand gripped the edge of the booth. His knuckles were white, his cast was gray with dirt cracked down the side, and his eyes, God, his eyes, were the eyes of a boy who had already said goodbye to the world twice this week. The biker across the table didn't move, didn't blink. And in that frozen second, Jake Morrison knew his life would either end tonight or finally begin. Before we go any further, friends, please take 1 second to subscribe to this channel, ring that little bell, and stay with me all the way to the end, because what this boy is about to reveal will shake you to the bone. And down in the comments, tell me the city you are watching from tonight. I want to see just how far this little boy's story travels around the world. Now, let's begin. The bell over the door of Penny's Harvest Diner gave a tired jingle, the kind of sound that had been welcoming travelers off Route 9 for 43 years. Only this time, nobody at the counter looked up with a smile. Nobody said, "Afternoon, honey." Nobody reached for a menu, because the thing that walked in wasn't a traveler, it was a child. And every adult in that diner, whether they admitted it to themselves or not, felt the air change the moment he crossed the threshold. Jake Morrison was 4'2" and weighed maybe 60 pounds soaking wet. And right now he was soaking wet because the November drizzle had worked its way through the 3 sizes too big flannel shirt he was wearing. The sleeves hung past his fingertips. The collar gaped around a neck too thin for a boy his age, and the bruises on that neck, 4 of them. 4 dark little ovals in the shape of a grown man's fingertips were the first thing Marcus Bull Davidson saw when he glanced up from his coffee. Bull was a big man, 6'4" in his boots, 300 pounds of leather and scar tissue, a gray beard that reached the second button of his vest, and a patch on the back of that vest that most people in this town crossed the street to avoid. He'd ridden into Penny's 20 minutes ago to warm up before the long haul back to Sacramento. He'd ordered the meatloaf. He'd been staring out the window at his Harley, thinking about nothing in particular. And then the little boy walked in. Bull watched him the way a man who's lived hard watches things. He didn't stare. He just noticed. And he noticed everything. The limp favoring the left side, the cast on the right arm, filthy frayed at the edges, the kind of cast nobody had bothered to change in a long time. The way the boy's eyes hit every exit in the room before they hit a single face. The way he flinched when the cook dropped a pan in the kitchen. Bull had seen that flinch before, in grown men. Men who'd come home from places the government didn't talk about. Men who slept with one eye open for the rest of their lives. He'd never seen it in a child. Jake shuffled forward, and every step was a negotiation with a body that didn't want to cooperate. His leg was shaking, not trembling, shaking. A fine, rattling tremor that ran from his hip all the way to the tip of his sneaker. He stopped at the edge of Bull's booth, and his little chest was rising and falling too fast like he'd been running, except Bull knew he hadn't been running. You couldn't run on that leg. The boy opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Sir," the voice was barely there. "Sir, can I sit with you until my legs stop shaking?" Bull didn't answer right away. He took 1 long second, maybe 2, to look at this child. Really look. And in that second, he saw a whole war written on a boy too young to read it. Then the biker lifted 1 massive tattooed hand and slid the ketchup bottle aside, and he said in a voice quieter than a man that size had any right to own, "Sit down, son." Jake sat, or rather Jake collapsed. He dropped onto the vinyl like his strings had been cut, and the moment he was off that leg, his whole body started shuddering so hard, the salt shaker rattled against the napkin dispenser. Bull watched him, didn't speak, didn't reach, didn't ask questions. He understood somehow the way some men understand these things without being told, that if he moved too fast, this boy would bolt. And if this boy bolted, something very bad was going to happen. Maybe tonight, maybe in an hour. So he sat, and he waited. Across the diner, a waitress named Doreen, 62 years old, grandmother of 5, had stopped with a coffee pot halfway to a customer's cup. She was staring at the booth. Her lips were pressed into a tight, pale line. Doreen had worked this diner for 29 years. She'd seen runaways before. She'd seen lost kids. She'd seen abused wives sneak in for a bathroom they could lock from the inside. She had never in 29 years seen a child this small look, this afraid. She set the coffee pot down, quietly, and she started walking. "Honey," she said, stopping at the end of the booth, "you want something to eat?" Jake's head snapped up. For 1 split second, his eyes went wide and white like a deer in headlights, and Bull saw the calculation run across his face. Is this a trap? Is she going to call someone? Will she tell? Then the boy's stomach answered the question for him. It growled, loud enough that Doreen heard it and had to look away for a second because her eyes had gone glassy. I don't have money, ma'am, Jake whispered. Didn't ask you for money, honey. I can't. Kids having the pancakes, Bull said. Doreen's eyes flicked to the biker. Just for a second, and something passed between them. Two strangers, two adults recognizing in each other the one thing that mattered right now. We don't let this one fall. Pancakes, she said. Whipped cream, chocolate chips, side of bacon, glass of milk. I don't, Jake started again. On me, Bull said. Jake's mouth opened, closed. His lower lip did something that broke Doreen's heart clean in half, but he got it under control. He nodded once, a tiny jerky nod. Doreen turned and walked back toward the kitchen, and Bull watched her go, and he saw her wipe her eye with the back of her wrist before she pushed through the swinging door. Bull turned his attention back to the boy. What's your name, son? Jake. Jake what? A pause, a long one. Bull saw the boy's eyes dart to the door. Morrison. How old are you, Jake Morrison? 9. You out here on your own? Another pause. Longer. Yes, sir. Bull let that sit. He took a slow sip of his coffee. Didn't push. A man who'd spent 30 years in and around the wrong kinds of places knew that the fastest way to lose a scared animal's trust was to reach for it. You let it come to you. You let it decide. My name's Marcus, Bull said, which was a thing he hadn't volunteered to a stranger in maybe 10 years. Folks call me Bull. Jake's eyes flicked to the vest, the patches, the skull, the rocker that read Hell's Angels. And Bull saw something almost like a tiny flickering smile, not of joy, God no, but of something else. Something like good. Good, a scary one. Maybe he can scare what I can't. Bull had seen grown men cry over less than that look. You from around here, Jake? No, sir. Where you from? The boy's hand, the one not in the cast, came up and pressed flat against his chest. Not his heart, the pocket of his shirt. Bull saw the outline of something small and rectangular under the flannel. Plastic maybe, a card, a key tag, something. I was at a motel, Jake said. His voice was so small, Bull had to lean in. The Starlight, with my uncle. Your uncle, Rick Holloway. Bull nodded slow, filing it away. And where's Rick right now, Jake? The boy's pupils went enormous. His cast hand twitched. He thinks I'm in the bathroom. Bull stopped breathing for a second. How long's he been thinking that, son? 37 minutes. The specificity of it, a 9-year-old boy counting every single minute of his own escape, did something to Bull Davidson that he wasn't prepared for. A feeling climbed up from somewhere under his ribs that he hadn't felt since Fallujah. A hot, quiet, terrible feeling. He kept his face completely still because he knew if he showed one flicker of it, the boy would shatter. Jake, he said, how'd you get away? The window in the bathroom. I broke the screen. I had to. The boy's voice caught. I had to go out on the ledge because the parking lot has cameras on the front, and he watches the cameras on his phone. You climbed out a bathroom window with a cast on. Yes, sir. How far's the drop? One story, I jumped into the hedges, there's a ditch behind them, and then the highway, and then this place. Bull's hand, the one wrapped around the coffee mug, had gone completely white at the knuckles. He made himself relax it, made himself take a breath. Jake, son, listen to me carefully. Is your uncle looking for you right now? The boy's whole body went rigid. Yes. You got a phone on you? No. He got a phone? Yes, sir. He got your picture on it. Jake nodded, and his eyes started filling up, and Bull saw him force the tears back down with a kind of grim practiced strength that no 9-year-old should ever have to own. If he comes through that door, Jake whispered, he's going to say I'm his. He's going to say I ran away because I'm bent. He's going to, and here the boy's voice finally broke just a little. He's going to take me back, sir. And if he takes me back this time, I don't think. He stopped. He couldn't finish. He didn't have to. Bull leaned forward, very slightly, and he said in a voice that was no louder than a whisper and no softer than concrete, Jake, look at me, look in my eyes, son. The boy looked up. He's not taking you anywhere. Jake's lower lip trembled. I don't know you, sir. No, you don't. Why would you? Because you asked. The boy stared at him, like the answer didn't compute. like nobody had ever given him a reason that simple in his entire life, and maybe nobody ever had. Doreen came back with the pancakes. 3 of them. Tall, fluffy, whipped cream sliding down the side, chocolate chips winking. Bacon. Milk. She set it down in front of Jake, and her hand hovered for a second over his shoulder. She wanted to touch him, to smooth his hair, to mother him the way her grandmother's instincts were screaming at her to do, but she stopped herself. She saw the cast. She saw the neck. She understood. "You eat slow, honey," she said. "It's all yours. Nobody's taking it away." Jake stared at the plate like it was a hallucination. "Eat, son," Bull said. Jake picked up the fork. His hand was shaking so hard the fork hit the plate twice before he could spear a bite. He got it into his mouth, chewed, his eyes closed. And then Bull watched this little boy, this half-starved, bruised, broken-armed 9-year-old runaway, eat 3 pancakes and 6 strips of bacon in the kind of silence that made every other customer in the diner stop what they were doing. Because by now, every single person in Penny's Harvest Diner had figured out what was happening. An old man in a John Deere cap stood up from the counter, walked over to Doreen and quietly said, "Whatever the boy wants, put it on my tab." A trucker named Ed, who hadn't cried since his wife died in 2009, was staring into his coffee with his jaw set like a vice. A young couple by the window had stopped eating. The cook had come out of the kitchen and was standing in the doorway with his arms crossed and his face set. Nobody said a word, but every single one of them, without a signal, without a plan, had taken up position. Ed had moved 1 stool closer to the door. The cook was between the booth and the hallway to the back. The old man in the John Deere cap had casually, oh so casually, leaned against the front window where he could see the parking lot. A diner full of strangers had just become a wall around one little boy. And then Bull said gently, "Jake." The boy looked up, mouth full. "That thing in your pocket. What is it?" Jake's chewing slowed. He swallowed. He put the fork down. His good hand went to his chest pocket, and for a long moment, he just held it there, like the thing inside was too dangerous to take out. "Son." Jake reached into the pocket. He pulled out a small plastic rectangle, the kind of diamond-shaped key tag that 1,000 cheap motels still used. It was orange, faded, a brass ring through the hole at the top, and on one side printed in chipped white letters, "Starlight Motel Room 14. He slid it across the table, slow, like he was handing over a grenade. "What am I looking at, Jake?" The boy's eyes came up, and for the first time since he'd walked in that door, Bull Davidson saw something harder than fear in them, something older than fear, something that in a 9-year-old boy should not have existed at all. "He's gonna kill me, sir." Bull's heart did not stop because Bull's heart didn't stop for anything anymore, but it felt like it. "Say that again, son." "My uncle, Rick, he's gonna kill me tonight. He's got it set up to look like an accident, and he told me so. Last night, he told me so, my face." The diner was so quiet, Bull could hear the coffee percolator in the kitchen. "Why would he tell you that, Jake?" "Because he said nobody would believe me." Bull closed his eyes, just for a second, just long enough to say something silently to whatever God had put this child in this diner on this afternoon at this booth. Then he opened them. "Jake," he said, "I need you to tell me everything. Start to finish, slow as you need. I got all the time in the world. You understand me?" The boy nodded. "But first," Bull said, and his hand moved slow, telegraphed, so the boy could see every inch of it to the inside pocket of his vest. He drew out a phone, a cheap burner, black scarred. He thumbed it on. "I'm going to make one call, one, and it's to a friend of mine. His name's Stone. He's a good man, better than me. He's going to help us figure this out. Is that okay with you, Jake?" The boy looked at the phone, at Bull, at the key tag on the table, at the door. And Jake Morrison, 9 years old, 4'2", 60 pounds, did something no child in his situation should ever have had to do. He weighed his options like a man. "Okay," he whispered. Bull dialed. 1 ring, 2. Someone picked up on the 3rd. "Stone," Bull said. "Listen to me real careful. I'm at Penny's on Route 9. I got a boy here, 9 years old, broken arm bruises on his neck, and an uncle at the Starlight Room 14, who he says is fixing to kill him tonight and make it look like an accident. I need you here. I need you here 20 minutes ago, and I need you to make the call to Sheriff Corbin on the way. Tell him I said it's the real thing. Tell him I said a kid's life." A pause. "I'll say, yeah, Stone. I'll stay right here. Boy's not going anywhere. Neither am I." He hung up. He set the phone down. He looked at Jake. Eat your pancakes, son. Jake picked up his fork. He took a bite. His eyes, for the very first time, and God only knew how long, filled all the way up and spilled over. Not a sob, not a sound, just two tears sliding down a face too old for 9 years into a plate of pancakes in a diner full of strangers who had, without knowing it, just become his army. Outside in the parking lot, the November drizzle kept falling. And somewhere less than 4 miles away, in room 14 of the Starlight Motel, Rick Holloway was just now walking out of the bathroom calling his nephew's name in a voice that was starting at last to crack when his eyes landed on the open bathroom window and the broken screen in the empty ledge below. Rick Holloway stood very still for about 3 seconds. Then he went for his keys. Rick Holloway slammed the motel room door so hard the cheap wreath on room 13 fell off its nail. He didn't stop to pick it up. He didn't stop for anything. 4 long strides to the rust-brown pickup keys already in his fist breath, coming in short, ugly bursts. He yanked the door open, dropped into the driver's seat, and his hands shaking now, shaking the way a man's hands shake when his whole plan is unraveling in real time, missed the ignition twice before the key slid home. "Jake," he muttered, and his voice was not the voice he used with the boy. This voice was lower, flatter. The voice he used when he thought nobody was listening. "Jake, you stupid little, you stupid." The engine turned over. Rick threw the truck into reverse. The tires spit gravel. He didn't know which way the boy had gone, but he knew 2 things. He knew a 9-year-old with a bad leg couldn't have gotten far. And he knew that if the cops got to Jake before he did everything in the house, the trust, the insurance, the 9 years of patient, careful plan within a plan work, all of it was gone. He pulled out of the Starlight lot and turned right onto the county road, eyes scanning every ditch, every driveway, every shadow. 4 miles east inside Penny's Harvest Diner, Bull Davison was leaning his forearms on the table and watching a 9-year-old boy try to hold himself together with both hands. "Jake, son, I need you to breathe." "I am breathing, sir." "No, you ain't. You're holding it. I can see you, in then out. Slow with me." The boy tried. His little chest hitched, shuddered, caught, finally settled into something that looked like a breath. Bull nodded just once, a quiet approval. "Good. That's good, son. Now, while we wait on my friend, I want you to tell me something. And I want you to tell me true. Can you do that?" Jake swallowed. "Yes, sir." "The bruises on your neck. How'd you get 'em?" Silence. "Jake?" "He was holding me down." "When? A Tuesday?" "What day is today, son?" A pause. The boy didn't know. Bull watched him count on the fingers of his good hand, and the counting failed, and the boy's eyes filled up again. "It's Friday, Jake. Tuesday was 3 days ago." "Oh, the cast, that arm, how'd that happen?" "He said I fell down the stairs." "Did you fall down the stairs?" The boy looked at him, not a word, just a look. Bull nodded slow. "Okay, son, okay, I hear you." Doreen had come back with a refill of coffee that Bull did not remember asking for. She set it down. She didn't leave. She just stood there, coffee pot in her hand the way a soldier stands post. Bull didn't tell her to go. He figured if the boy wanted one more adult in his corner, he'd say so. The boy didn't say so, but he didn't flinch either. He glanced up at Doreen once, and Doreen gave him the smallest, softest smile a woman can give, and the boy's shoulders dropped half an inch. Half an inch from a boy built of barbed wire was a canyon. "Jake," Bull said, "tell me about Rick." The boy's good hand closed around the edge of the pancake plate, squeezed. "He's my mom's brother." "Where's your mom, son?" "She died. When 2 years ago." "I'm sorry to hear that, Jake." "She had cancer." "And your dad?" The boy's eyes dropped to the table. Something moved behind them. Something Bull couldn't read yet. "He died before that." "How long before?" "I was 6. "What happened to your dad, Jake?" A longer silence. Long enough that Bull almost repeated the question. "He didn't. He waited." "He fell," the boy said finally. "Off a ladder. He was fixing the gutter." "That's what they told you. That's what everybody said." But Jake's eyes came up, and there it was again, that thing Bull had seen in them earlier, that hard thing, that older-than-9 thing. Rick was there, sir. Rick was holding the ladder. The world inside that diner got very, very still. Bull kept his face flat. He kept his hands on the table. He did not move. Because if he moved, if he so much as twitched, the boy would see the hurricane building behind his eyes, and the boy would stop talking. "Jake," Bull said, soft as dust. Has Rick ever told you anything about your dad? He told me one time when he was drunk. He told me my daddy was a... The boy stumbled on the word switch tracks, a dumb son of a gun who couldn't even hold a ladder. And then he laughed. But it wasn't a laughing kind of laugh, sir. It was the other kind. The other kind? The kind where he's laughing 'cause he did something. Bull closed his eyes for half a second. He opened them. How'd you end up with Rick, son? Mom's will said I had to go with family. He was the only one left. Grandma died the year before. There wasn't nobody else. Nobody. My daddy had a sister in Oregon. She tried. She sent letters. Rick said she wasn't blood, not really, and she was a drunk, which wasn't true, and he told the judge she was a drunk, and the judge believed him because Rick had it in a house and his hair was combed. The venom in the last 4 words, his hair was combed, did not belong to a 9-year-old. It belonged to a boy who had sat in a courthouse 2 years ago and watched his whole life get handed to the wrong man by a judge who looked at haircuts. Your aunt, Bull said, in Oregon, you remember her name? Aunt Caroline. Caroline Morrison. She lives in Bend. She's got 2 dogs and one of them is named Biscuit, and she sends me birthday cards every year, but Rick throws them out. I found one in the trash one time. That's how I know she's still sending them. Bull filed that name away like a man loading a round into a chamber. Caroline Morrison, Bend, Oregon. Biscuit. Okay, Jake, you're doing great, son. I need to ask you something harder now. Can I? The boy nodded. The motel. Why's Rick got you at a motel? Jake's hand tightened on the plate again. The trembling came back. The plate actually slid a 1/4 inch across the table. We're moving. Moving where? He said Nevada. Why Nevada? He said there's work. Jake, look at me. Is there work? The boy shook his head. Slow. What's in Nevada, son? There's a lake. Bull's blood went cold in his body. A lake. Yes, sir. He kept talking about it. On the drive, he said it was quiet. He said the water was deep. He said nobody swims there this time of year because it's too cold, but kids don't always listen, he said. Kids get excited and they go in the water even when grown-ups tell them not to, and sometimes the boy swallowed, sometimes they slip. Doreen made a small sound in her throat. She turned her face away. He told you this? Yes, sir. When? Last night, in the motel. He'd been drinking. He sat on the bed across from mine and he told me. He said tomorrow we were going to see the lake. He said it was going to be a fun trip. And then he said, the boy stopped. Say it, son, out loud once, and then you don't ever have to say it again. Jake's mouth moved. No sound came out. He tried again. He said that sometimes a boy's luck runs out just like his daddy's did. Bull's coffee cup cracked. Nobody had seen him do it. His hand was still relaxed on the handle, but a hairline fracture had opened down the side of the white ceramic mug, and a single dark drop of coffee was beating up through it onto the table. He set the cup down, very gently. Jake, he said, how old are you, son? 9, sir. I told you. When's your birthday? The boy's mouth trembled, just a little. Tomorrow. Bull did not react. He could not afford to. But inside his chest, something that had been smoldering for 20 minutes caught clean fire. Tomorrow you turn 10. Yes, sir. Jake, does Rick ever talk about money? The boy's eyes went to the ceiling, thinking, calculating. Not in the way kids calculate, in the way witnesses calculate. He talks about it when he thinks I'm asleep. He talks on the phone to a man named Dale. Dale is in Phoenix. Dale is a lawyer, I think, because Rick calls him counselor sometimes, but only when he's mad. Rick says, and here the boy closed his eyes like he was reading the words off the back of his eyelids. He says that the trust is locked up till I'm 10. He says that when I turn 10, it opens up, and if something happens to me after that, it goes to him because he's the guardian. But if something happens before it goes to Aunt Caroline, because that's what my mom wrote, he cusses about it a lot, sir. He really hates that part. Bull sat very, very still. So he has to wait until after tomorrow. Yes, sir. And tomorrow is the lake. Yes, sir. Jake, how much is in the trust, son, do you know? I heard him say a number one time, on the phone. What was the number? The boy looked up. $460,000. Doreen put a hand over her mouth. Bull did not move. He did not blink. He sat there across from a 9-year-old boy who had just explained with the flat precision of a forensic accountant the motive for his own murder. And Marcus Davidson, who had done 3 tours in the worst places the United States government could find on a map, who had buried friends who had seen things he didn't talk about, ever felt something break loose behind his ribs that had nothing to do with anger. Anger came later. Anger came when you had time for it. What he felt right now was a clarity so sharp it hurt. He picked up the phone again. He dialed. Stone picked up before the first ring finished. 10 minutes out, Stone said. Corbin's on the horn. He's sending 2 units. Stone, it's worse than I told you. How worse? Father, too. There was a beat of silence on the line. Say again, Bull. The boy's father, 6 years old when it happened, fell off a ladder. Uncle was holding the ladder. That's 1. Boy's mother cancer 2 years ago, so that's natural fine. Now it's the boy. Tomorrow, Lake in Nevada. Boy turns 10 tomorrow. Trust fund opens at 10, 460,000. Guardian inherits if something happens after the birthday. You hearing me, Stone? I'm hearing you. This ain't his first one, Stone. This is a pattern. Keep the boy where he is. Don't move. I'm coming hot. Hurry! Bull hung up. He looked at Jake. The boy was watching him. You heard all that, son? Yes, sir. You okay? The boy thought about it. Actually thought. I don't know, sir. Fair enough. That's a fair answer. Jake picked up his fork, put it down, picked it up again. He took one more bite of pancake, small, like he was rationing. Then he set the fork down for good. Sir, yeah, Jake. If my Aunt Caroline gets the money, if something happens to me, would Rick stop? Bull's throat closed for a second. Nothing's gonna happen to you, son. I know what you said, but if it did, would he stop? Jake, look at me. The boy looked. Nothing is gonna happen to you. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. You understand me, son? You got a big, ugly old biker sitting across from you, and you got a waitress who's ready to beat a man half to death with a coffee pot, and you got a cook back there with a cleaver, and you got an old boy by the door with a pocket knife he ain't scared to use, and you got a trucker who I'm pretty sure is carrying a tire iron, and you got a deputy 10 minutes out and 2 more behind him, and you got the whole Sonoma County charter of the Hells Angels about to roll up on this diner like the cavalry, and every single one of us, every single one, would rather die on this carpet tonight than let your uncle walk out that door with you. Do you hear me, Jake Morrison? Do you hear me, son? The boy's face did something. It was not quite a smile. It was not quite a sob. It was a third thing, a thing that lives only on the faces of children who have, just for the first time in their entire lives, heard someone tell them that they matter. Yes, sir, Jake whispered. Good. Bull reached across the table. Slow. Telegraphed. He held out his hand, palm up on the table between them. He did not grab. He did not reach for the boy. He just laid his hand out there open in the middle of the table like an offering. Jake stared at it for a long time. Then slowly he put his small, good hand on top of Bull's. And Bull's 6'4", 300 pounds covered in scars he'd never talk about, closed his fingers around a 9-year-old boy's hand like it was the most fragile thing he had ever held in his life. Doreen had to turn and walk back to the counter. Her shoulders were shaking. Ed the trucker looked down into his coffee and did not look up for a full minute. And that was when the bell over the door jingled. Every adult in Penny's Harvest Diner went still. Bull's hand, the one not holding Jake, slid off the table and came to rest on his thigh. Very casual, very relaxed, very close to something inside his vest that he did not carry decoratively. The man who walked in was maybe 45. Lean, wiry, a face like a hatchet, rust-colored hair starting to gray at the temples, a jacket that hadn't been washed in a month. His eyes swept the diner. Counter. Booths. Back. They stopped on the booth. They stopped on Jake. Jake did not move. Jake did not breathe. Jake's small hand in Bull's went from warm to ice in the space of a single heartbeat. There you are, the man said, and his voice was warm, friendly, the warmest, friendliest voice a man could put on. Buddy, you had me scared half to death. I told you, wait in the room, didn't I? Jake did not answer. The man started walking toward the booth, slow, calm, a concerned uncle picking up a runaway nephew. He had his hands half-raised, palms out, the universal gesture of, I'm not a problem, folks. Nothing to see here. He's got a condition, the man said to the diner at large, smiling apologetic. Wanders off. Doctors say it's the meds. I'm real sorry if he bothered anybody. Come on, Jakey, let's go. Aunt Kim's waiting on us. There was no Aunt Kim. Bull knew there was no Aunt Kim. Jake's fingers in Bull's hand spasmed once hard. Rick Holloway reached the end of the booth. "Come on, son," he said, and he held out his hand to Jake, still smiling that warm, friendly, fake as a $3 bill smile. "Up we go." Bull looked up, slow, and for the first time, Rick Holloway's smile flickered. Because for the first time, he actually saw the man sitting across from his nephew. The size of him, the vest, the patches, the eyes most of all. "Sir," Rick said, and his voice had climbed half an octave without him realizing it. "I appreciate you looking after him. He's a runner. I've been worried sick. I'll take him off your hands now." "Sit down," Bull said. "Excuse me. I said sit down." "Sir, with all due respect, he's my nephew. He's got a medical condition. I have his paperwork right here in the truck." "Sit down, Rick." The use of the name did it. Rick Holloway's face did a thing, just a tiny thing. A flicker at the corner of the mouth, a narrowing at the eye, and Bull saw it and filed it because Bull had spent a lifetime reading flickers like that on men in places where a flicker was the only warning you got. "How do you know my name?" Rick said. Not a question, a statement. "Jake here and I were just having a chat." "Jake." Rick turned to the boy and the friendliness had thinned. The voice was still soft, but the soft had teeth in it now. "Jake, buddy, what have you been telling this man, huh? You been telling stories again?" "You know what we talked about with the stories?" Jake's whole body flinched. And that flinch, that single involuntary full-body flinch of a 9-year-old boy at the sound of his guardian's voice saying his name was the last piece of evidence Marcus Davidson needed. Not that he'd needed any, but it was the last piece. "Rick," Bull said, "you got two choices right now. You want to hear them." Rick's eyes had gone hard. The pleasant mask was gone. Underneath it was something Jake had seen 1,000 times and nobody else had ever been allowed to see. "What choices?" Rick said. "Choice one. You sit your ass down in that booth right there across from me, hands flat on the table, and you wait, quietly, politely, till the sheriff gets here, which is going to be about 8 minutes. And choice two," Bull smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Choice two, you ain't gonna like." Rick's hand moved toward his jacket pocket. It never got there. Because Ed the trucker, who had been standing up from his stool real casual about 90 seconds ago, was now directly behind Rick Holloway with a tire iron in his fist. And the cook who had come out of the kitchen real casual about 60 seconds ago was now 10 feet to Rick's left with a cleaver down against his thigh. And the old boy in the John Deere cap was between Rick and the door. And Doreen had the coffee pot raised and her other hand was on the landline behind the counter, and the line was already ringing at the sheriff's dispatch. And Bull Davidson was standing up, slow, unfolding. 300 pounds of bad decisions and worse mercy rising out of a vinyl booth, one hand still holding a 9-year-old boy's fingers, the other one empty and loose at his side. Rick Holloway looked around the diner. He counted the adults. He counted the exits. He counted the seconds. And somewhere out on the county road, a siren started faint. At first, then closer, the particular rising wail of a sheriff's cruiser coming in with the lights on. And under it, behind it, a second sound. A deeper sound. A sound Rick Holloway had never heard in his life, but that Bull Davidson would have recognized in his sleep. 11 motorcycles, coming in hot. Rick's hand, the one halfway to his jacket pocket, very slowly came back out into the open, empty palm up. He smiled. That fake, friendly smile back on his face like a mask snapped into place. "Okay," he said. "Okay, fellas, there's been a misunderstanding here. Let's all just calm down and we'll get this sorted out like gentlemen." Bull did not sit down. Jake did not let go of his hand, and the bell over the door jingled for a second time. The bell jingled, and the diner's whole center of gravity shifted at once. Rick Holloway's head snapped toward the door, and the friendly mask he'd been trying so hard to hold slipped another quarter-inch down his face. The man who came through the door was not what Rick had expected. He was not police. He was not big, not the way Bull was big. He was maybe 5'10", lean. As a whip, salt and pepper beard trimmed tight to the jaw, a black Dickies jacket zipped halfway, a baseball cap pulled low. He walked the way men walked in places where walking the wrong way got you hurt, and he did not look at Rick, and he did not look at the diner, and he did not look at Bull. He looked at the boy. "Hey, bud," the man said, and his voice was soft in a way that made Jake's shoulders drop half an inch on instinct. "Name's Stone. I'm a friend of Bull's." "You okay?" Jake nodded, couldn't speak. His hand was still in Bull's. "You done good, son," Stone said. "You done real good. I need you to sit tight for another couple minutes, okay? That's all, couple minutes." "Yes, sir." Stone's eyes finally slid sideways to Rick. They did not do anything. They did not narrow. They did not harden. They just landed on him flat and patient the way a man's eyes land on a problem he already knows the solution to and has known it for 20 years. You'd be Rick, Stone said. I don't know who you are, mister, but didn't ask if you knew me. Asked if you were Rick. I'm his uncle. I'm his legal guardian. I have paperwork. Paperwork in the truck. Yeah, I heard. You got a funny habit of keeping important paperwork in a truck, Rick. Rick's jaw flexed. Outside, the siren was closer now, maybe 2 minutes out. And under it, the rolling thunder of those 11 motorcycles had become something you could feel through the floor of the diner. The old man in the John Deere cap glanced out the window and his eyes went wide for just a second, and then he settled back against the glass with the tiniest, slowest smile. Bull, the old man said without turning around. Your boys is here. Much obliged, Hank. They blocking the lot. Appears they are. That's considerate of 'em. They're considerate fellas. Rick's eyes were darting now, counting. The tire iron behind him, the cleaver to his left, the old man at the door, the biker across the table. The new one, Stone standing casual as Sunday morning 5 feet from his right elbow, the waitress with her hand on a phone, the cook, the truckers, and Jake's hand inside a fist the size of a catcher's mitt. Rick did the math, and Rick did not like the math. Look, he said, and now the friendly was gone, and what came out was the voice underneath. The voice underneath the voice, the one Jake had been hearing in motel rooms and locked bedrooms for 2 years. I don't know what kind of story this boy told you people, but he is a compulsive liar. He is on medication for it. I have his whole file back at the truck, Stone said. Yes, at the truck, and I am more than happy to go get it and show all of you good folks what is actually going on here, okay? This has been a long trip. He's off his meds. He does this. He picks the scariest looking man in the room and tells him daddy's beaten him, and last time it was a cop in Reno. Time before that it was a preacher. I have police reports. In the truck, Stone said. Rick stopped. Stone tilted his head a quarter inch. You got a lot of things in that truck, brother. Don't call me brother. Wouldn't dream of it. Bull hadn't sat back down. He hadn't moved at all, actually, except his thumb was making a slow, small circle on the back of Jake's hand, the kind of thing a man does without thinking about it when he's trying to keep a scared animal calm. The boy had stopped shaking, not because he wasn't scared, because he had something to hold on to. Jake, Rick said, and his voice tried for warm again and landed somewhere between whining and wet. Jakey, buddy, tell these nice men the truth. Tell them what we talked about. Tell them about the lion Jake. Tell them. Jake did not look at him. Jake, look at me. Look at your uncle. The boy's eyes stayed on the table. Jake Matthew Morrison, you look at me when I am speaking to you. And there it was, the voice, the real one, the one that had come out of the dark in motel rooms and living rooms and parked cars. The one that had put those 4 bruises on a 9-year-old's neck on Tuesday. Every adult in Penny's Harvest Diner heard it. Doreen's knuckles went white on the coffee pot. Ed the trucker took half a step forward and Stone, without looking, lifted 2 fingers off his thigh in the tiny, almost invisible gesture that meant hold. Ed held. Bull looked down at the boy. Jake, you don't have to look at him. You don't have to talk to him. Not now. Not ever again. You understand me, son? Yes, sir. You keep your eyes right here. On me. On this table. You're safe. Yes, sir. Rick's breathing changed. It was getting shallow. The fingers of his right hand were twitching against his thigh like he was playing a piano. Only he could hear. And Bull, who had seen that particular tick before in men about to do something very stupid, shifted his own weight forward onto the balls of his feet without appearing to shift at all. Rick, Stone said, I'm only going to say this once, so I'd like you to listen real careful. The sheriff is 90 seconds out. The boys outside are going to hand him the parking lot, and then they're going to sit on their bikes and have a smoke because this ain't their party. This is the sheriff's party. Now, you can wait for the sheriff calm, or you can wait for the sheriff not calm. Either way you're waiting, there is no third option. Do you hear me? I want my nephew. You ain't got a nephew no more, Rick. You don't have the authority to. No, I don't, but the sheriff does. And he's going to hear what the boys got to say, and then he's going to make his decision, and I'd just as soon we all wait nice and quiet for that. Rick's right hand twitched one more time, and then in a move so fast that later half the witnesses would not be sure they had seen it, he reached. Not for his jacket. for Jake. His arm shot across to the booth. Fingers splayed, aiming for the boy's wrist. The one in the cast, the broken one, the one it would hurt to be grabbed by, and for a fraction of a second, the air in the diner went sideways. What happened next happened in about a second and a half. Bull's free hand came off his thigh and caught Rick Holloway's wrist in midair and stopped it the way a steel beam stops a falling hammer. Rick's forward momentum carried him chest first into the edge of the table, which knocked the wind out of him in a short, ugly grunt. Stone, who had been 5 feet away, was suddenly not 5 feet away, and Rick's other arm, the one that had in fact now gone into the jacket pocket, came out empty because Stone's hand was wrapped around Rick's wrist inside the pocket like a vice, and Rick made a small choke sound that was part pain and part surprise, and Stone said soft as a lullaby, "Let go of it, Rick. Whatever it is, let go of it right now or I break your thumb." Rick let go of it. Stone pulled Rick's hand out of the pocket very slowly and came out with it holding a small folding knife, already half open, the blade glinting dull under the fluorescent lights. He thumbed it closed one-handed without ever looking at it and set it on the counter behind him. And Doreen Blesser picked it up between 2 fingers like it was a dead rat and dropped it into a plastic zip bag she pulled out from under the register because Doreen had worked this diner 29 years and she knew how evidence worked. Rick was bent over the table now, one arm pinned by Bull, the other by Stone, his breath whistling through his teeth. He was not trying to fight. He was trying to think. Bull could see him thinking. "You're done, Rick," Bull said quietly. "You just pulled a knife on a child in a diner full of witnesses. You are done." "He was running," Rick wheezed. "I was just trying to—" "You were just trying to grab a broken arm. Yeah, we saw. Everybody saw." Outside, the sirens cut off one after the other as the cruisers pulled into the lot, and the heavy rumble of the bikes had gone low and idle, and then silent in a sequence of cut engines. Boots on gravel, radio chatter, the particular specific rhythm of a scene being set, and then the bell over the door jingled a third time. Sheriff Raymond Corbin was 61 years old, a grandfather, a deacon at the Methodist Church, and a man who had been sheriff of this county for 26 years. He had a round, kind face and the eyes of a man who had seen what human beings do to each other and had not let it turn him mean. He walked in with a young deputy on his left, Deputy Sarah Mendez, 3 years on the job, sharp as a tack, and another deputy on his right who stayed by the door. Corbin took one long look at the scene in front of him. One long look, and in that one look he did the entire accounting, the biker, the boy, the man bent over the table, the second biker holding a wrist, the knife on the counter in a plastic bag, the waitress with the phone, the trucker with the tire iron quickly casually leaning against the wall. Now the cook with the cleaver back in its block on the counter. Now real natural, the old man at the window, hands in his pockets, innocent as a baby. He nodded once. "Afternoon, Bull." "Afternoon, Ray." "Afternoon, Stone." "Ray." "Doreen, honey, you all right?" "I'm fine, Ray, I'm just fine. The child, though. The child needs a doctor, and a sandwich, and about 4 counselors. We'll get 'em all 3. Mendez." "Sheriff, take Mr. Holloway here, cuff him, read him his rights, put him in the 2nd unit. Don't put him in with anybody. I want him by himself." "Yes, sir." "And Mendez?" "Yes, sir." "Gentle, I want this by the book, every inch of it." "Yes, sir." Mendez was already moving. Rick was still hunched over the table, and Bull and Stone released his arms in the same synchronized half-second, stepping back just enough for the deputy to slide in with the cuffs. Mendez worked with the economical calm of a woman who had been doing this job since her first day on it. The cuffs clicked. The Miranda started. Rick didn't fight. His face had gone the particular gray of a man who's just realized he is not going to be the smartest person in any room he's in ever again. "I want a lawyer," Rick said, "and you'll get one. I want Dale Petrowski in Phoenix. Write it down on the paperwork, Mr. Holloway. I want him now. Phone's at the station, sir." Rick's eyes, going past Mendez, locked onto Jake one more time, just for a second, and the face he made, the small, tight, private face he made at the boy, in that 1 second would have told anybody watching exactly what kind of man he was if they hadn't already known. Jake did not look at him. Jake's eyes were on Bull. Mendez walked Rick out. The bell jingled. Through the window, half the diner watched a hatchet-faced man get folded into the back of a cruiser by a deputy who did not once raise her voice. The cruiser door shut, the lock engaged, and something in the room let out a breath that had been held for what felt like a year. Sheriff Corbin turned. He took off his hat, He walked over to the booth slow and he stopped a respectful 3 feet from the table because he understood the same way Bull had understood that you do not loom over a child who has spent his life being loomed over. "Hi there, son," he said. His voice was very soft. "My name's Ray. I'm the sheriff here. That means I'm the one who makes sure the rules get followed. Can I sit with you for a minute?" Jake looked at Bull. Bull looked on him. He nodded once, slow, a real nod. "This one's okay, son," nod. "Yes, sir," Jake whispered. Corbin slid into the booth beside Bull. Not across from the boy, because across would have been an interrogation, and beside was a conversation. He set his hat on the seat next to him. He folded his hands on the table. He did not have a notebook out. He had not turned on a recorder. This was not yet the interview. This was something before the interview. "Son," he said, "you got a name." "Jake. Jake Morrison." "Jake, that's a good name. You hungry, Jake?" "Yes, sir, but the nice lady already fed me." "That she did. Doreen, you got any more of those pancakes back there?" "I got a whole stack coming, Ray." Good, good. Jake, I'm going to ask you a couple of easy questions first, okay? Nothing hard, nothing scary, just so I know who to call about you. Is that okay?" "Yes, sir." "You got any family, Jake, besides your uncle, I mean?" Jake's eyes came up. "I got an Aunt Caroline in Bend, Oregon. Her last name is Morrison, same as mine. She's my daddy's sister. She has 2 dogs and one of them is Biscuit. She sends me cards every year on my birthday, but Rick throws them away. But I think she would come. If somebody told her, I think she would come right away." Corbin nodded slow and his eyes were wet at the corners, though his face did not change. "Jake, I think she would too. Mendez will start making calls the second she gets back to the car." "Okay. Okay, sir. Now, one more easy one, and then we can stop for today and do the rest tomorrow when a real nice lady from the county comes to talk to you. Deal?" "Deal, sir." "Jake, the man, your uncle, he said some things just now about meds, about lying, about a police report in Reno. I'm asking you, son, and I want you to be honest because there is no wrong answer here, I promise you. Is any of that true?" Jake thought about it, really thought. Bull saw him going through it in his head, item by item, like the boy was still afraid that one wrong word would send him back. "No, sir, I don't take any meds. I never been to Reno. I never told a cop anything before today. I never told anybody anything before today, sir. Today is the first time." "Why today, Jake?" The boy's hand tightened on Bull's. "Because tomorrow's my birthday." The sheriff was quiet for a long moment. "Son, can you tell me why that matters? Why tomorrow matters?" And Jake Morrison, 9 years old in a ruined cast with a stomach full of pancakes and a good man's hand around his own, told Sheriff Raymond Corbin, calm and clean and straight, the whole thing. The trust fund, $460,000. Locked till age 10. After 10, it opens. If the child dies after 10, it goes to the guardian. If the child dies before 10, it goes to Aunt Carolyn. The drive to Nevada, the lake, the quiet, the cold. The things Rick had said last night sitting on the other motel bed with a beer in his hand. The dad on the ladder, Rick holding it, Jake, 6 years old. The investigators never asked Rick any follow-up questions because Rick had an alibi that wasn't an alibi, but looked like one if you weren't pushing. The cancer, the funeral, the judge who looked at haircuts, 2 years of locked rooms and long sleeves in August, the Tuesday bruises, the August break, the September break, the emergency room 3 counties over where nobody knew them and where Rick had claimed the boy fell off a bike, the motel, room 14, the window, the ledge, the diner. Corbin did not interrupt. Not once. He took no notes. He just listened. When Jake finished, and finishing took a long, long time, the old sheriff let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding, and he said very softly, "Jake, you have just done the bravest thing I have ever seen a person do in this job. You hear me, son? In 26 years. The bravest thing." Jake's eyes filled up. "Am I in trouble, sir?" "No, son. Oh, no, 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 no. You are not in one single kind of trouble. You are the opposite of in trouble. You are the one who just saved your own life, Jake Morrison. Do you hear me?" The boy didn't answer. He couldn't. Corbin turned his head. "Bull. Sheriff. Motel key. Room 14. Bull slid it across the table. Corbin picked it up with a napkin. He held it for a moment like it weighed more than plastic ought to. "Mendez is going to want to get over to that motel," he said mostly to himself. "Get a warrant phoned in before she goes. Get the manager to hold the room. I want every camera on that parking lot. I want every receipt. I want the boy's bag. I want whatever's in that truck. I want phone records, going back 2 years. I want a subpoena for a lawyer in Phoenix named Dale Petrowski before the ink's dry on the intake form. In Bull, yeah, Ray. Oregon, Caroline Morrison. You got a man who can get eyes on her tonight. Not to spook her, just to make sure she gets a phone call from the right person in the right order with the right support around her. Stone on it. Mendez will call official. Stone will call, unofficial. Understood, Stone said, already pulling out a phone. Corbin looked at the boy again. Jake, I'm going to go make some calls. Miss Doreen is going to bring you those fresh pancakes, and this big old gentleman right here is going to sit with you until the nice lady from social services gets here in about an hour. Her name is Mrs. Alvarez, and she is, in my personal opinion, the kindest human being in this county. Until she gets here, nobody goes near you except the folks in this room. And nobody in this room is going to lay a finger on you or scare you or ask you one more hard question. Okay. Okay, sir. You need anything right now? Anything at all? Jake thought about it. Then in a voice so small it almost wasn't a voice at all, he said, Can somebody cut this cast off, sir? It hurts. It's hurt for a real long time. Doreen made a sound behind the counter like a woman being stabbed. The sheriff's face did a thing it had not done in a long, long time. Son, he said, and his voice was hoarse, we are going to get that cast off today. We are going to get you to a real doctor today. You are not going one more hour in that thing, I swear to God. Jake nodded. Thank you, sir. Corbin stood up. He put his hat back on. His hand just for a second came to rest on the top of Jake's head. Light brief the way a grandfather touches a grandchild, and then he was moving, and the deputy at the door was moving, and the whole operation outside was starting to roll. And Jake Morrison, 9 years old, turning 10 tomorrow, sat in a booth at Penny's Harvest Diner with his hands still in Bull Davidson's, and he did not cry, not yet, because he was not ready yet. But he was close. He was so close. Stone was already on the phone before the sheriff had made it out the door. He stepped a few feet away from the booth, turned his back to the room, and spoke low and fast, the kind of voice a man uses when every word has to land clean the first time. Rhodey, it's Stone. Listen up. I need a favor, and I need it yesterday. There's a woman in Bend, Oregon, Caroline Morrison, got 2 dogs, one named Biscuit. She's the only good blood a 9-year-old boy has in this world, and the sheriff's fixing to call her inside the hour. I want one of ours sitting on her street before that call comes in. Not to spook her, not to knock, just in case. You understand me, just in case. A pause. Yeah, that's the one. That's the name. No, it ain't a drill. It's the real thing, Rhodey. It's a real live one. Another pause. Stone's jaw flexed. Because her brother's already dead of a ladder that didn't fall on its own, and her nephew almost went in a Nevada lake tomorrow morning. That's why. Now move. He hung up. He put the phone away. He turned back to the booth, and whatever had been in his face for that call was gone by the time he got there. And what was left was just the soft-eyed uncle voice and the easy smile. Hey, bud. Yes, sir. You like dogs? Jake blinked. Of all the questions the day had thrown at him, that one wasn't on the list. Yes, sir, I used to have one. Before my mom. What was his name? Her name, Rosie. She was a beagle. Good dog. Best dog. What happened to her son? Jake's eyes dropped. Rick said she ran off the second week. Stone did not react. He didn't need to. Bull's thumb, still making that slow circle on the back of Jake's hand, did not stop, but it slowed a quarter beat, which was the only outward sign that another small, dark piece had just clicked into the puzzle. Well, Stone said gently, your Aunt Caroline's got 2 of them, I hear. Biscuit, and what's the other one, Jake, you remember? Gravy. Biscuit and Gravy. Stone's mouth twitched into the first real smile anyone in the diner had seen all afternoon. Somebody in that family's got a sense of humor, bud. Jake almost smiled back. Almost. The corners of his mouth moved and then stopped, like a muscle that had forgotten the motion. Doreen came out from behind the counter with a fresh plate, more pancakes, scrambled eggs, a little cup of applesauce on the side, and a tall glass of orange juice. She set it down, and her eyes caught Bull's across the table, and Bull gave her a single nod that meant, thank you, ma'am, for every single thing. Doreen touched the back of the booth with one hand, and she looked down at the boy and she said very quietly, Jake, honey, I'm Doreen. I own this diner. You remember that name, okay, Doreen? And this is my place. And from now until the day you turn old and gray, if you are ever hungry or tired or scared or just plain lonesome, you come to my door. Don't matter what time. Don't matter what year. Don't matter if I'm dead, and it's my grandkid running the place. You say the name Jake Morrison and the door opens. You hear me, son. Jake's bottom lip did the thing. He nodded. Yes, ma'am. Good, now eat. Jake ate. Outside, the operation had moved into a higher gear. Deputy Mendez had come back inside for 30 seconds to grab a statement from Doreen and another from Ed the trucker, all while Stone stood by with arms folded. The second cruiser had already left for the Starlight Motel with 2 more deputies in it, and Hank Old Hank in the John Deere cap, who it turned out was a retired state trooper, which explained an awful lot riding along as a consultant because Corbin trusted him and the county was short on bodies. The 11 motorcycles in the lot had done exactly what Stone had promised, killed their engines parked in a loose perimeter, and now their riders were standing around smoking and drinking gas station coffee and doing absolutely nothing that could be put on a police report. 2 of them were already directing traffic around the lot politely for the civilians who wanted to come get lunch and had no idea what they were walking into. The rest were just present. A wall, a patient, quiet bearded wall. And if Rick Holloway had by some miracle gotten free of those cuffs in that cruiser, he would not have made it 3 feet across the gravel. Inside the booth, Bull finally sat back down. Slow. His back was tight. His knees weren't what they used to be. He settled into the vinyl across from the boy, and he did not let go of Jake's hand because the boy had not let go first. Jake. Yes, sir. You know what happens next? No, sir. A lady is going to come. Her name is Mrs. Alvarez. Sheriff was right about her son. She's good people. She's the one who's going to figure out where you sleep tonight. She's also going to be the one who calls your Aunt Caroline official-like. And she's going to want to hear the story from you, the same story you told the sheriff, except slower. She'll have a little tape recorder. You don't have to be scared of it. You just talk and it listens. Okay, sir. There's also going to be a doctor. Not a hospital yet, a doctor they send out for kids in your situation. She comes to you instead of the other way around. She's real gentle. She's going to look at your arm and she's going to look at the bruises and she's going to take some pictures. Those pictures are not because anybody wants to see him, son. Those pictures are the things that keep Rick from ever coming near you again. Jake was quiet a second. The pictures are for the trial. Bull looked at him, 9 years old, and he already knew what trial meant. Yeah, son, they're for the trial. Am I going to have to go to the trial? Maybe, probably, but not for a good long while. And when you go, you won't go alone. You understand me? You won't walk in there by yourself, not ever. Jake nodded slow. Sir. Yeah, Jake. Do you think my Aunt Caroline is going to be mad that I never wrote her back? Bull's chest did a thing. No, son, I don't think she is going to be mad. I think she is going to hug you so hard your ribs crack, and then she's going to feed you till you pop, and then she's going to let you sleep for about 3 days in a bed that's got clean sheets, and then she's going to ask you real gentle if you want to meet biscuit and gravy. That's what I think. Jake was quiet for a while after that. He ate his eggs. He drank about half the orange juice. The shaking in his leg, Bull noticed, had stopped. At some point in the last 40 minutes, without anyone saying anything about it, the boy's leg had stopped shaking. Stone slid into the booth beside Bull. Rhodey's got a man on her street. She's at home. 2 cars in the driveway, lights on, dog in the window. He's just watching. She don't know he's there, and she don't need to. Corbin's deputy is making the call out now from the station. She'll know inside 10 minutes. Good. Bull. Yeah, we got a problem. Bull's eyes sharpened a notch. Tell me. Dale Petrowski, the lawyer in Phoenix. What about him? He ain't a real lawyer. Bull blinked once. Say that again, brother. He's got a bar license, technically. Filed the paperwork 10 years ago. Hasn't practiced in 8. Disbarred in Nevada for something ugly in 17. Whole thing got memory hold. He runs a P.O. box and a website. He does not have clients, Bull. He has business partners. Meaning when Rick said on the phone that his lawyer was Dale in Phoenix, he wasn't calling a lawyer. He was calling a fixer. How fast you get that? Rhodey's wife. She's a paralegal out of Reno. 2 phone calls. Bull's jaw worked. So there's somebody else in this. At least one. And they know Rick's in cuffs. They will inside of an hour if Rick gets his phone call, which he will, because it's his right. Bull looked at Jake. The boy was listening because the boy always listened, because listening was how the boy had stayed alive. Bull did not try to hide the conversation from him. The boy had earned the truth, and hiding things from him now would be one more grown-up lie added to 2 years of grown-up lies. Jake. Yes, sir. You ever hear your uncle on the phone with anybody besides Dale? The boy thought. There was a guy named Marty, but that was just about trucks. Anybody else? A lady. Just one time, last month. She called the house phone, and Rick picked it up, and he got real mad, and he took the phone out on the porch. You hear any of what he said? He said, I told you not to call me on this line. And he said it's handled. And he said, the boy paused, concentrating, pulling the memory up word by word. He said the 10th is the 10th, and I ain't moving it up for you or anybody else. Stone and Bull looked at each other. The 10th, Stone said quietly. Birthday. Birthday, Bull agreed. She wasn't calling about the nephew, Bull. She was calling about the money, on a schedule. That's what I heard. Somebody out there is expecting a cut. Big cut. From the look of it, Jake had gone very still. Sir, he said. She said another thing. What was that, son? She said, don't forget my end. Stone let out a long, slow breath. Okay, Bull said. Okay, we tell Corbin, right now, before Rick makes that call from the station. Stone, already typing. Stone's thumbs were flying across his phone. Bull watched him for a second, then turned back to Jake. Son, you are full of gold today. You know that every little thing you remember, every little word, every little name, all of it is gold. You understand me? Yes, sir. I need you to do something real hard for me. Okay, sir. I need you to try to remember anything else. Names, places, phone numbers, letters in the mail, people who came to the house, anything. When Mrs. Alvarez gets here with her little tape recorder, I want you to tell her all of it. Even the stuff that seems small, even stuff you ain't sure about. Can you do that, Jake? Yes, sir. Good man. The bell over the door jingled quieter this time, and a woman came in. She was maybe 50, soft around the middle gray, streaking the front of her black hair, a navy cardigan over a blue blouse, a canvas bag on her shoulder that had seen some miles. She did not look like a social worker on TV. She looked like somebody's aunt coming to pick up a casserole. Her eyes found Jake first before anybody else, and her whole face did something that was not pity. Pity would have scared the boy, and this woman was too smart for that. It did something quieter. Something like, there you are. I've been looking for you. She crossed the diner slow. She stopped at the booth. She did not reach for the boy. She did not sit. She spoke to Bull first, which was the exact right move. Sir, I'm Elena Alvarez from the county. Sheriff Corbin called me. I'm here for Jake. Ma'am, may I sit beside that station? Asked the boss. Bull nodded at Jake. Alvarez's eyes came to the boy. Jake, hi, my name's Elena. Sheriff Corbin is a friend of mine. Can I sit here with you? You can say no. Jake looked at her. He looked at Bull. He looked back at her. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Jake. She slid in beside him on the same side again, never across, and she set her bag down carefully between her feet. She did not pull out a tape recorder. She did not pull out paperwork. She pulled out a small bottle of water, cracked the seal on it in front of him so he could see it had not been opened, and set it on the table within his reach. In case you want some, she said. No pressure, I just brought it. Jake's eyes got very wet very fast. It was such a small thing, a sealed bottle of water. But a child who has spent 2 years living with a man who spikes drinks understands a sealed bottle of water. Thank you, ma'am. Of course, sweetheart. Alvarez looked up at Bull. Sir, I don't have your name. Marcus, most folks call me Bull. Bull, Jake told the sheriff you've been sitting with him since he came in. Is that right? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Truly, I'd like to stay with Jake for a few minutes and have a quiet talk. Would you be willing to stay in the diner while we do that? Not at the booth, just in the room, in case he wants to look over and see you. Jake's hand tightened on Bull's. Bull looked at the boy. Son, she's right. Her and you gotta have a grown-up talk, and it's easier if it's just the two of you. But I ain't going anywhere. I'm gonna be right over at the counter. Right there, you can see me the whole time. If you need me, you lift one finger right off the table. I'll be back in this booth before your hand comes down. You hear me? Yes, sir. One finger. One finger. That's the deal. Bull squeezed the boy's hand. He let go. And he stood up from the booth, 300 pounds of a man, and he moved to a stool at the counter exactly 11 feet away, which was close enough for Jake to see him in his side vision, and far enough to give Alvarez the space she needed. Stone drifted over to the counter and took the stool beside him. Doreen set 2 mugs of fresh coffee down in front of them without asking. Nobody said anything for a minute. The two men just watched the booth from the corner of their eyes the way men watch something precious. At the booth, Alvarez was doing her quiet work. Her recorder was out now, sitting in the middle of the table with its little red light on, but she had gone over what it was and how it worked and what Jake could ask her to do with it, and the boy had nodded through all of it, and now they were talking. Low, calm. Alvarez was not writing, she was just listening. Once Jake glanced over at the counter to make sure Bull was still there. Bull lifted his coffee mug a quarter inch and set it back down their signal, and Jake's shoulders dropped that same half inch they always dropped, and he turned back to Alvarez and kept talking. Stone nudged Bull's elbow. Look at her brother. I see her. She's good at this. She's real good. Where do they find him? Somewhere. Somebody still makes him, thank God. Bull took a sip of his coffee. His hands, which had been steady all day, were trembling now very slightly, only because the bite was not holding them anymore. He hid it by wrapping them around the mug. Stone saw. Stone did not comment. Bull. Yeah. You okay? I will be. You ain't done one like this in a while. No. It's hitting you. Yeah. That's all right. It's allowed to hit you. I know. Stone was quiet a second. Then your boy would be about this age. Bull did not answer. He took another sip of coffee. His jaw was set. Just saying, Stone said softly. I know what you're saying, brother. And I thought of it. Of course I thought of it. I thought of it the second he walked in that door. But that ain't what this is. No. No, this is just a kid. This is a kid who asked to sit down. And there wasn't any other thing I could have said except yes. Stone nodded slow. That's the right answer, Bull. Only one I had. Over at the booth, Alvarez reached slowly into her bag and pulled out a small cloth, soft-worn clean, and she asked Jake something quiet, and Jake nodded, and she very, very gently pressed the cloth against his cheek where a tear he hadn't known was there had left a track. The boy let her. He didn't flinch. He didn't pull back. He let a strange woman wipe a tear off his face, and Bull, watching from the counter, had to turn his head and pretend to read the specials board for a long moment. The front door opened. The bell jingled. Sheriff Corbin came back in with a deputy, and behind them a younger woman in a puffy jacket with a medical bag over her shoulder. She was maybe 30. Glasses, hair up. She had the tired kind face of somebody who had gotten the call while eating lunch and had not finished lunch. Dr. Haynes, Corbin said to the diner at large quietly. Peds, Ray, where's the boy to booth with Alvarez? Give him a minute, Raymond. I got a minute. Corbin came over to the counter, hung his hat on the stool next to Bull's, and did not sit. He leaned his forearms on the counter and spoke low. Starlight sealed. Room 14 is a gold mine. Beer cans. Notepad with dates on it. Map with a circle around a lake in Churchill County. Duffel bag in the truck with a change of clothes. His clothes, not the boy's. And a jerry can of kerosene that hadn't been there an hour ago, according to the motel manager who watched Rick load it into the cab this morning. Kerosene. Yeah. For what? Reckon we're going to find out. Bull closed his eyes for a second. Ray, Stone got something for you. Stone slid his phone across the counter. Corbin pulled reading glasses out of his breast pocket. He read. His face didn't change, but the muscle along his jaw got tight. Petrowski. Yeah. He's been on my desk before, Stone. Figured. Different case, different state, same stink. There's a woman, too. Jake heard her on the phone last month. Said, quote, don't forget my end. Corbin took his glasses off. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. So this is a ring. Looking like it. At least 3. At least. God almighty. Ray, Bull said. Rick don't get his phone call till we say so. Bull, you know I can't. I know what you can't do legal. I'm saying he don't get it fast. You got a reason to hold that phone call for 45 minutes. There's always a reason. And in 45 minutes, we can have a tap on Petrowski's line, and we can have Rhodey's wife doing 10 more phone calls, and we can have that woman, whoever she is, identified through Rick's cell tower data. Once Rick gets that call, whoever's on the other end of it is in the wind, Corbin thought. He looked at Stone. Your wife's paralegal is that good. My wife's paralegal made a U.S. senator cry in a deposition. Corbin nodded slow. 45 minutes, and then Rick gets his call, and it's going to go to the real lawyer the state provides him, not Petrowski, because Petrowski is about to be a person of interest and can't represent him anyway. Works for me. Mendez. Sheriff. Rick Holloway's phone call is delayed 45 minutes on procedural grounds. I'll sign whatever I need to sign. In the meantime, Torres starts cell tower polls for his phone last 60 days and cross-reference incomings. And somebody call Phoenix PD, real quiet. Tell them we've got a situation that involves one of their disbarred residents, and we'd appreciate a discreet knock and talk before close of business today. On it, Sheriff. Corbin finally let out a breath. Then he glanced over at the booth and his face softened. Bull, she about done close. Doc's gonna look him over in Doreen's back office. Doreen said we can use it. No paramedics coming in and spooking the boy. Cast-off photographs exam the whole nine. Then Alvarez takes him to a foster placement tonight. It's a retired nurse, a woman named Beverly. Alvarez trusts her like her own mother. Tomorrow morning, bright and early, Caroline Morrison flies in from Portland. Bull's head came up. She's coming tomorrow. Soon as the deputy told her she was in the car, she drove to Portland, bought a ticket at the counter, first flight out, lands 7:42 a.m. She said to tell Jake, and I quote because I wrote it down, tell him, Aunt Caroline's coming and she's bringing biscuit. Bull's eyes went wet. He turned his face down to his coffee. He did not speak for a second. She's bringing the dog on the plane, Stone said. She paid the fee, Corbin said. Emotional support. Vet signed off in 45 minutes. Alaska Airlines made an exception. There's good people in this world, boys. I know we forget sometimes, but there's good people in it. Bull cleared his throat. Ray? Yeah. When Alvarez is done, and before the doc takes him back, I want 2 minutes with the boy. Just 2. You got him, brother. At the booth, Alvarez clicked off her recorder. She said something soft to Jake. The boy nodded. She slid out of the booth and she walked toward the counter, and her eyes were red, and she did not try to hide it. Sheriff, Bull, he's ready. He's exhausted, but he's ready. I've got enough for tonight. More tomorrow with a forensic interviewer, but tonight, what I've got is enough to keep him safe, and that's all I needed. He say anything else new? Corbin asked. He said Rick told him last night that if Jake didn't cooperate tomorrow at the lake, he'd do to him what he did to Rosie. Bull's hand closed very slowly around his coffee mug. The dumb. Sheriff, Bull said, I'm gonna need to step outside for about 60 seconds here in a minute. Take 90, Bull. Appreciate you. Alvarez put her hand on Bull's forearm very lightly. He's asking for you. Bull stood up. He walked slow because his knees were locked back across the diner to the booth. He sat down across from the boy. Jake looked up. Hey, son. Hey, sir. You did great. She was nice. She's real nice. Sir. Yeah. Am I going to sleep at your house tonight? Bull's chest cracked open. No, son. I wish you were. You have no idea how much I wish you were. But the rules say I can't be the one to take you home tonight. You're going to go stay with a very kind lady named Beverly just for tonight, and then tomorrow morning, bright and early, Aunt Caroline. That's right, son. And Biscuit, Bull's voice caught. Yeah, son, and Biscuit. Jake was quiet for a moment. Sir. Yeah, Jake. Will I see you again? Bull reached across the table, and this time he did not wait for the boy. He laid his big scarred hand palm up, and the boy put his good hand into it without a second's pause. Jake Morrison, listen to me, son. As long as you want to see this old man again, you will see this old man again. You hear me? You turn 10 tomorrow. You're going to turn 11 and 12 and 15 and 25, and I am going to be there at every single one of them. If you want me to be, all the way up to the day they put me in the dirt. I ain't ever going to be further away than a phone call. Do you understand what I'm telling you, son? Yes, sir. You are not alone anymore, Jake. You hear me? Yes, sir. Say it back to me, son. The boy swallowed. His mouth trembled. I'm not alone anymore. That's right. I'm not alone anymore. That's right, son. I'm not the ussa. And then finally, for the first time in 2 years, for the first time since a hospital room, in October of the year his mother died, Jake Morrison put his face down on his good arm on the table of a diner booth, and he cried, really cried. The kind of crying a 9-year-old does when a dam that should never have been built in a child's body finally breaks. Great heaving, shuddering, ugly, beautiful sobs, and his whole small body shook with them, and his good hand gripped Bull's like it was the only thing keeping him on earth. And Marcus Davidson, 6'4", 300 pounds, 30 years in the worst rooms, in the worst countries in the world, sat across from a little boy he had known for 2 hours, and let the boy break apart on his hand, and he did not take his hand away. He did not say, shh. He did not say it's okay. He did not tell the boy to stop. He just said over and over so low that only the boy could hear, "I got you, son. I got you. I got you. I got you." And every single adult in Penny's Harvest Diner, without planning it, without signaling it, turned their faces away to give a little boy the dignity of his first real cry. Outside, 11 bikers stood a quiet perimeter in the November drizzle, and in the back of a sheriff's cruiser, Rick Holloway sat in silence waiting for a phone call he did not yet know was not coming. The crying went on a long time and nobody tried to shorten it. When Jake finally lifted his face off his arm, his eyes were red, his cheeks were soaked, and his nose was running, and Doreen was already there with a clean kitchen towel that she set down in front of him without a word. The boy wiped his face. He blew his nose. He took a shaky breath. He looked up at Bull. "I'm sorry, sir." "Son, you apologize for that one more time and I'm gonna get real upset." "Yes, sir." "You hear me?" "Yes, sir." "Good." Dr. Haynes came over, then slow the way Alvarez had come, over no sudden moves, no looming, no reaching. She crouched down beside the booth so her face was below Jake's, which was maybe the smartest thing a grown-up had done in that diner all afternoon. "Hi, Jake. I'm Dr. Haynes. You can call me Kate if that's easier. Doreen is going to let us use her office in the back for a little while. I'm going to look at your arm and the bumps on your neck, and I'm going to take the old cast off. That part won't hurt, I promise. It's a little noisy, but it won't hurt. Can I do that with you?" "Can Bull come?" "Yes, absolutely. Bull can come if you want him." Jake looked at Bull. Bull nodded. "I'm coming, son." They walked back through the diner, slow Bull with one hand on the boy's good shoulder, Alvarez on his other side. Doreen led the way and held the office door open. The 11 bikers in the parking lot, without a word passing between them, shifted a little closer to the back wall of the diner because that's where the office was, and because they had decided a long time ago that wherever the boy was, they were. Inside the office, Dr. Haynes worked fast and she worked gentle. The cast came off in pieces and the arm underneath was thinner than it should have been, and the skin was gray-white from months without air, and the set was bad. One of the bones had healed on a crooked line, and Haynes's jaw tightened just once when she saw it, but it was not the worst of what she saw. The worst was the rest of him. The bruises on the neck were only the beginning. There were more on the ribs, on the back. Old ones layered over newer ones, a history book written on a child's skin, and Haynes documented every page with the steady hands of a woman who had testified in court before and knew what her photographs would need to do. Jake did not flinch while she worked. He looked at Bull the whole time. Bull looked back and did not let his face do anything at all because the boy did not need to see what Bull was feeling. What Bull was feeling could wait. When it was done, Haynes cleaned the arm, wrapped it in a soft temporary sling, and told Jake that tomorrow a real orthopedic doctor in Portland would fix the arm properly, probably re-break it and set it right, and that he would be asleep for that part and would not feel a thing. Jake nodded like a small soldier receiving orders. Out in the main diner, Stone was on his phone again. He hung up as Bull came back out with the boy, and he caught Bull's eye, and he gave the tiniest nod, which meant, "Got her." "Got who?" Bull asked once Jake was settled back in the booth with a grilled cheese Doreen had just slid in front of him. "The woman," Stone said, "on the phone last month." Cell tower polls matched a number in Scottsdale. Rhodey's wife ran it through her contacts at the Bar Association. "It's Petrowski's daughter." Bull's head came up slow. His daughter. Amanda Petrowski, 31, real estate license, 2 prior fraud complaints that never went anywhere because Daddy made him go away. And Bull, listen to this. I'm listening. She was the beneficiary on a life insurance policy on Jake's mother. Policy was taken out 8 months before the cancer diagnosis. $200,000. Bull did not speak for a second. "Say that to me again." Life insurance on the boy's mother, beneficiary Amanda Petrowski, policy taken out 8 months before the diagnosis, paid out in full April of the year she died. Stone. "Yeah. Her cancer. Was it? I don't know. Nobody knows yet. But Corbin already called the oncologist's office in Modesto. He wants the records, and he wants an exhumation order on the table by Monday." Bull closed his eyes. He opened them. He looked at the booth where a 9-year-old boy was eating a grilled cheese sandwich with his good hand. "It wasn't just the date," Bull said quietly. "It might not have been. It might have been the mom, too. Might have been. And tomorrow it was supposed to be the kid. Tomorrow it was supposed to be the kid." Bull took a long, slow breath. He let it out. "Stone. Yeah, brother. That woman. Amanda, where is she right now?" "Scottsdale PD knocked on her door 18 minutes ago. Real polite. She was home. She had a packed bag by the front door, Bull. Already packed. They're holding her on a material witness warrant till Corbin and Phoenix sort out jurisdiction. She was running. She was running early. She'd already seen something online, maybe. Or Rick texted her this morning, we don't know yet. But she was 10 minutes from being gone. They got her phone. Petrowski. Petrowski's riding in with Phoenix PD right now. No resistance. He lawyered up inside of 10 seconds, which tells you what kind of lawyer he is. It tells you he's the kind that knows what happens when the real ones start asking questions. Exactly. Bull looked down at his hands on the counter. They were not trembling anymore. Ray, he said. Corbin came over. Yeah. You got Rick cold. I got Rick colder than a meat locker, Bull. And with Amanda on the material witness hold and Petrowski in a Phoenix interview room, I got a triangle. Rick's gonna flip the second he finds out his lawyer ain't his lawyer and his partner ain't his partner. He's gonna flip so hard, he's gonna give us at everything. On the doll of it. And the boy is in protective custody, effective right now. Emergency guardianship order goes through tonight. I've got a judge standing by at home. Caroline Morrison becomes the boy's temporary legal guardian the second her plane touches down tomorrow morning. Permanent hearing inside of 90 days. Rick don't get within a mile of this child ever again. I will personally see to it that if the man makes bail, which he will not, he won't get within a mile of this child. I will put my badge on that, Bull. I believe you, Ray. Good. Corbin reached across the counter and put his hand on Bull's shoulder for a second. Then he went back to work. Alvarez came out from the back office with a small paper bag. She walked over to the booth and set it down in front of Jake. Jake, I got you something. Just a couple things. Toothbrush, pajamas, a stuffed animal I didn't know what you liked, so I got you a plain old brown bear because you can't go wrong with a bear. You don't have to keep him if you don't want to. Jake took the bear out of the bag. He held it in his good hand. He looked at its face. Thank you, ma'am. You're welcome, sweetheart. Ma'am. Yes, Jake. Can I name him? Of course you can name him. Jake thought about it for a long moment. Marcus, he said. Bull 11 feet away at the counter had to turn his face down to his coffee and stay there for a while. Alvarez smiled very small. Marcus is a real good name for a bear. Yes, ma'am, it's a good name. By 5 o'clock, the cruiser carrying Rick Holloway had been gone for 2 hours. Another cruiser had come and gone twice. Deputy Mendez had taken 6 more statements, including a very careful one from Bull and another from Stone and a third from Hank, who had written his like the report he would have written 30 years ago, clean and cold, and dated at the top. The 11 motorcycles out front were down to 4 now. The rest had peeled off at Stone's quiet say-so. Once it was clear, nothing else was coming through the door. And at 5:15, a silver SUV pulled up in front of Penny's Harvest Diner, and a small woman in her 60s got out. Beverly, the retired nurse. She had a gentle face and hair cut short and a canvas coat the color of wet bark, and she came inside slow, and she did not go to the booth. She went to the counter, and she sat next to Bull. You, Marcus, she said. Ma'am, Alvarez said I should introduce myself to you before the boy. Why's that? Because she said if you didn't like me, the boy wouldn't like me. And she said you were the one person whose opinion mattered tonight. Bull looked at her. Beverly, that right? Beverly Ann Carpenter, 39 years in pediatric nursing, the last 11 as a foster placement for children in medical distress. I have raised from nothing 19 kids in the last 11 years. 4 are in college. 2 are in the Army. 1 is a paramedic. 1 is a middle school teacher. The other 11 are in junior high school, and 1 is about to graduate with honors. I have a 3-bedroom house, 2 empty beds tonight, a dog named Cooper, who is afraid of thunder and loves children, and a chocolate layer cake. I baked this morning because Alvarez called me at 11 a.m. and said she'd maybe have somebody by supper time. I don't have a husband anymore. He passed in 19. He was a good man. He was the one who started us doing this. I kept going because I didn't know how to stop. Bull looked at her for a long moment. Beverly. Yes, Marcus. That's the right answer. I thought it might be. Go on over to him. Introduce yourself easy. He don't do sudden. I know, hon. I read the sheet. She got up. She went over to the booth, and Bull, watching from the counter, saw her do exactly what Alvarez had done, sit on the same side, no looming, no reaching hands visible. She talked to Jake for maybe 4 minutes. She did not touch him. At the end of the 4 minutes, Jake looked over at the counter at Bull. Bull lifted his coffee mug a 1/4 inch. Jake nodded. And Jake, with a plain brown bear named Marcus in the crook of his slinged arm and a paper bag in his good hand, slid out of the booth and stood up, and he walked across the diner to the counter with Beverly, half a step behind him, and he stopped in front of Bull. "Sir." "Yeah, son. I'm going with Miss Beverly now." "I know you are." You said phone call." "I did." "Does Miss Beverly have a phone?" "Miss Beverly has a phone." "I'll call her phone," Beverly said. "Or you'll call mine. Either way, honey, you want to talk to him tonight? You can talk to him tonight. You want to talk to him tomorrow? You can talk to him tomorrow. He's not going anywhere." Jake nodded. "Sir." "Yeah, Jake. One more thing." "Anything, son?" The boy hesitated. Then he stepped forward and he laid his good hand flat against Bull's leather vest right over the patch on the chest, and he left it there for 2 full seconds. He was not looking up at Bull. He was looking at his own hand. And then without a word he turned, and he took Beverly's hand with his good hand, and he walked out of Penny's Harvest Diner into the November evening with a stuffed bear named Marcus tucked against his chest. Bull did not move for a long time. He sat on the stool with his hands flat on the counter, and he did not look at Stone, and Stone did not look at him, and Doreen pretended to be very busy with the coffee pot. After a while, Stone said quietly, "Brother, yeah, you did right today. Yeah, you did real right. Yeah." The next morning at 7:42 a.m., Alaska Airlines Flight 2119 landed in Sacramento, and a woman named Caroline Morrison walked out of the jet bridge with a small, confused beagle in a carrier and eyes that had not closed the whole flight. Alvarez was waiting for her. So was Bull. So was Stone. Bull had told Alvarez the night before that if she didn't want bikers in the terminal, he understood he'd stay in the parking lot. Alvarez had said, "Marcus, you are coming into that terminal. That boy is going to need to look up and see you." They drove to Beverly's house in a convoy. Caroline Morrison rode with Alvarez. Bull and Stone followed. At the house, Beverly opened the front door, and behind Beverly was Jake in clean pajamas with a blue robe over them, and his hair was wet from a real bath, and his sling was fresh and white, and his eyes were the first thing Caroline saw. She made a sound that was not a word. She was across the porch in 2 steps. She went to her knees right there on Beverly's welcome mat, and she opened her arms, and Jake, who had spent 2 years making himself small, who had spent 9 hours yesterday making himself brave, ran the 3 steps to her as fast as a boy with a sling can run, and he crashed into her arms, and Caroline Morrison held her brother's son for the first time in 2 years on a stranger's front porch in Sonoma County, and she rocked him, and she did not say anything. And Biscuit the Beagle came out of the carrier and pressed himself against both of their legs and would not move. Bull watched it from the sidewalk. Stone stood beside him. Neither of them said anything for a long time. Finally, Jake pulled back from his aunt just a few inches, just far enough to see her face, and he said very quietly, "You came." "Oh, baby, oh, Jake. I have been trying to come for 2 years. I have been, oh, honey. I am so sorry. I am so sorry it took this long. I am so sorry." "It's okay, Aunt Carolyn." "No, baby, it is not okay. It is not okay. But I am here now, and I am not going anywhere. And you are coming home with me, okay? You are coming home to Bend, Oregon, and you are going to have your own room, and Biscuit is going to sleep on your bed every single night unless you tell him not to. And Gravy is waiting at the house with Mrs. Henderson next door, and we are gonna. She couldn't finish. She just held him. After a while, Jake turned his face still inside the circle of her arms, and he looked out across the lawn. "Aunt Caroline, that's Bull, the one I told you about on the phone this morning. I see him, baby. Can I go say bye?" "Of course you can. You take your time." Jake came down the porch steps slow. He walked across the lawn with his aunt watching from the doorway and Beverly behind her with a hand over her mouth. He walked right up to Bull. He stopped in front of him. He looked up. "Sir?" "Yes, son. I have to ask you something." "Ask me anything, Jake." The boy thought about his question for a long moment. When it came out very small and very clear. "Why did you let me sit?" Bull looked down at him, at the sling, at the bruises that were fading on the neck already just since yesterday, at the eyes that were still tired, still scared around the edges, but that were no longer the eyes of a child who had said goodbye to the world. He went down on one knee on the sidewalk, slow. His knees popped. He did not care. "Jake Morrison, you came into that diner yesterday and you asked me a question. You said, 'Can I sit with you until my leg stops shaking?' That's what you said. You remember." "Yes, sir." Son, in my whole life, there ain't been one single thing anybody asked me for that I had a harder time saying yes to. Every bone in this old body wanted to say, get away from me. Kid, I'm the wrong guy. Go find somebody clean. You hear me? Yes, sir. But you asked, and a boy who walks into a diner looking like you looked and still has the guts to ask that boy don't need to hear no. Not from me, not from nobody, not ever again in his life. You hear me, son? Yes, sir. So why'd I let you sit? The boy waited. Bull's voice went quiet. Because you asked. Jake's eyes filled up, but he did not cry. Not this time. He nodded very small and he reached out his good hand and he laid it flat on Bull's shoulder exactly the way he'd laid it on his chest the night before in the diner. I'm gonna call you, Jake said. You better. Every week. Every week, son. And when I'm bigger. Yeah. When I'm bigger, I want to ride on the back of your bike, one time, just to see. Son, the day you turn 16, you tell your aunt to call me. I will ride from Sacramento to Bend, Oregon, to put you on the back of that Harley, and I will take you anywhere in this country you want to go, and I will bring you back in one piece. That is a promise from me to you. You hear, yes, sir. Go on now, your aunt's waiting, your whole life is waiting. The boy nodded, he turned. He ran as much as a boy with a sling can run back across the lawn to his aunt, who scooped him up with both arms and stood up with him, and though he was 9, almost 10, and big for her to hold, she held him anyway, and she did not set him down. She looked across the lawn at Bull. She mouthed 2 words, thank you. Bull tipped his head half an inch. That was all the answer he had in him. Rick Holloway was arraigned the following Monday on charges that grew over the next 14 months from attempted murder of a minor to include the murder of his brother-in-law 6 years earlier, conspiracy to commit murder in the poisoning of his sister, and the killing of a dog belonging to a minor in his care. He was convicted on all counts. He will die in prison. Amanda Petrowski flipped inside of 48 hours and testified against her own father, who is also currently in prison. Dale Petrowski's disbarment was upgraded to permanent, and his remaining assets were seized as proceeds of fraud. The trust fund in Jake Morrison's name, $460,000 of it, was transferred into a court-supervised account with Caroline Morrison as trustee, untouchable until Jake's 18th birthday. Jake grew up in Bend, Oregon, in a house with 2 dogs, an aunt who cooked too much, in a bedroom with a window he never once climbed out of. His arm healed crooked at first, and then, after 2 surgeries, healed straight. He saw a therapist every Tuesday for 7 years. He made the honor roll in 7th grade and held it through high school. He called Marcus Bull Davidson every Sunday evening for the next 9 years, without missing a single week. On the day he turned 16, a gray-bearded biker pulled up in front of Caroline Morrison's house, and a long-legged teenage boy climbed onto the back of a Harley-Davidson, and the 2 of them rode the Oregon coast south all the way to Crescent City and back. And the boy did not let go of the biker's vest for 300 miles. And every year on November the 14th, on the anniversary of the coldest afternoon of Jake Morrison's life, a plain brown bear named Marcus sat on the shelf above his desk, watching him do his homework. The bear is there still, because of a door that opened, because of a waitress with a coffee pot, because of a trucker with a tire iron, because of a cook with a cleaver, because of an old man at a window, because of a sheriff who believed a child, because of a social worker with a sealed bottle of water, because of a nurse with a chocolate cake, because of an ant on the first plane out, because of 11 bikers in the gravel, because of a stranger in a leather vest who said yes when every easier answer was no, because a 9-year-old boy with a broken arm and a trembling leg and nothing left to lose walked up to the scariest-looking man in the room and asked to sit, and one person just once saw him. That is all it ever takes. That is all it has ever taken. That is all it will ever take. One person, one yes, one act of kindness given freely to someone the world had already given up on. The rest is just a life saved.